The air at Christie's was a suffocating blend of $500 perfume, vintage champagne, and the sterile musk of old money. Usually, this scent signaled a Montreal group triumph. Tonight, it smelled like my funeral. I stood in the shadows of a marble pillar, one thumb a blurred twitch across my primary phone, while my shoulder pinned a second device to my ear. My spine felt like dry glass. "The Tokyo merger files are in your inbox, Caspian," I whispered. My voice was a raspy thread. Every word felt like swallowing shards of flint. "I've flagged the labor cost discrepancies. The car is at the south entrance, and I've moved your consulate dinner to 8:30. You have 12 minutes to finish your drink." In the main hall, Caspian Montreal didn't look my way. He never did. To him, I was a ghost in the machine, an invisible force ensuring his coffee stayed hot and his scandals stayed buried. He stood among a circle of titans, his tuxedo so sharp it looked forged rather than sewn. He was beautiful the way a glacier is, imposing and capable of crushing anything in his path. He raised his paddle with casual indifference, committing $54 million to a canvas he'd likely never look at twice. "Kestrel," his voice crackled in my earpiece, cool, commanding, and devoid of warmth. "Where is the background check on the auctioneer? You're lagging." An icy spike of pain shot behind my left eye. A migraine. I'd been running on 4 hours of sleep for 6 days, a fever simmering in my blood since Tuesday. When I'd asked for a morning off to see a doctor, he hadn't even looked up from his tablet. He'd simply handed me a folder and ordered a flight to London. Caspian Montreal didn't have a slot for human frailty. "I sent it 4 minutes ago," I managed, breathing through a straw. The room tilted, the floor shimmering like a dark lake. "Check again," he snapped. "The connection is lagging, fix it. I don't pay you to make excuses for the hardware." The hardware, that's all I was. I stepped out of the shadows, but the floor lurched. A roar like a crashing ocean filled my ears. I reached for the pillar, but my fingers slid uselessly off the cold stone. Thud. The Persian rug muffled my fall, but the clatter of my 2 phones echoed like gunshots. I lay there, cheek pressed to the floor. Vision tunneling, I watched the hem of a silk gown pull away in disgust. Then, a pair of polished Oxfords stopped inches from my face. "Caspian." I waited for him to kneel. I waited for a shred of the panic I felt every time his life was in crisis. I waited for a single spark of humanity. "Kestrel," his voice was sharp, not worried, embarrassed. "Get up, the press is looking, stop making a scene." I tried to tell him my lungs were filling with water, that the hardware was dying, but my jaw was locked. His chief of security, Miller, rushed over and knelt. "Sir, she's burning up, we need an ambulance." Caspian didn't move, he checked his watch. "Call a private medic," he told Miller, his tone clipped. "I don't want a siren outside while I'm closing this deal. It'll tank the mood." And Miller, "Yes, sir." "Find her purse. She has the encryption codes for the Tokyo files. Get them, then get her out through the service entrance." He didn't look at my face as they lifted me. He looked at the phones on the floor. The next time I woke, the world was white and smelled of bleach. "You're awake," a voice said. I turned my head slowly. My best friend, Isabel, sat by the window in her nursing scrubs, her face a mask of fury. "How long?" I rasped. 2 days, Cass. Your body literally gave up." I closed my eyes. Did Caspian call? Isabel let out a jagged laugh. "Call? He sent Miller to drop you at the ER entrance. He didn't even come inside. He sent a messenger 2 hours later, not with flowers, but to pick up your laptop and office keys." She leaned forward, her voice trembling. "The messenger said Mr. Montreal expected the 8 a.m. briefing notes ready by morning. He said, and I'm quoting the prick, 'Tell her to stop being dramatic and get back to work.'" A cold, hollow silence settled over my chest. For 5 years, I was the ghost in Caspian Montreal's machine. I'd missed my sister's wedding for a merger and my mother's final birthday for a hostile takeover. I'd shrunk my existence until I was just an organ in his corporate body. In his eyes, I was just hardware that had glitched. I looked at my hands, thin, pale, and shaking. I had given him my youth and my loyalty, and he'd looked at me dying on a rug and asked for encryption codes. "He thinks I'm a variable," I whispered, the words tasting like copper and ash. "Kes," Isabel reached for my hand. I pulled away, sitting up despite the scream of my muscles. I grabbed the hospital stationery. My vision was clearer than it had been in years. "If you remove a variable from a complex equation, Isabel," I said, my voice finding its edge, "the whole thing collapses. I'm about to show him exactly what I cost." I wrote 2 sentences, no sincerely, no signature. "I am not a glitch. I am the system, and as of now, the system is offline." The first 24 hours were a drug-induced haze. The second were spent watching the world burn. I curled up on my sofa, a piece of furniture I'd barely touched in 3 years, clutching lukewarm tea. My skin was sensitive and my head throbbed, but I couldn't stop scrolling. Without me to bury the scandals, the vultures were feasting. The Financial Times was brutal. The Ice King melts. A catering staffer had leaked a hot mic clip from the auction. Caspian's voice, usually so controlled, sounded jagged. Marriage is a biological prison for the weak. They want a stable family man. Find one in a petting zoo. Montreal Group shares plummeted 12% by the opening bell. The Ice King was no longer a genius. He was a liability. A heavy, rhythmic pounding at my door sent adrenaline through my weak frame. The air in the hallway always seemed to drop 10 degrees when he was on the other side. Kestrel, open the door. I checked your security feed. Of course he had. Even now, he treated my privacy like a corporate asset. I pulled the door open but blocked the way. Caspian stood there, immaculate in charcoal gray, though the shadows under his eyes were new. You're late for the morning briefing, he said. No hello, no inquiry into my health, just a command. I don't work for you, Caspian. I resigned. Miller has my keys. He stepped forward, invading my space. He scanned my thrift store bookshelves and fraying rug with profound distaste. My grandfather has frozen my trust, he said, his voice a dangerous rumble. The board gave me an ultimatum. I have 90 days to marry a woman of substance to rehabilitate my image, or the chairmanship goes to Lucien. I leaned against the wall. Lucien, the cousin who tried to sell your IP to the Caymans. Lucien has spent 48 hours playing the devoted family man, Caspian spat. He's already moving into the executive suite. He's planning to fire the staff you spent years protecting. He walked toward me, stopping inches away. The scent of his peppery cologne felt like a threat. I need you back, Kestrel. I almost died on your floor, I said, looking into those winter-sea eyes. You asked for encryption codes while I was being loaded into an ambulance. A flicker of irritation, not shame, crossed his face. I ensured you were taken to the best hospital. I paid the bill. You dropped me at the like a bag of laundry, I shouted. I'm not going back to being your shadow. I don't want an assistant, he whispered, the vibration hitting my chest. I need a wife. You're the only one who knows my secrets and can navigate my grandfather's temper. It has to be you. I stared at him. A wife? You want to marry the variable? It's a contract. 90 days. $10 million cash. And I'll personally fund that design firm in Paris you've been pinning to your secret Pinterest board. I stiffened. How do you know about that? I'm Caspian Montreal. I know everything about my assets. 10 million isn't enough, I said, my heart hammering. If I'm going to save your empire and lie to the world, we do it on my terms. Caspian's eyes narrowed. Name them. You live here, I said, gesturing to my 60-square-foot living room. For 1 week, starting now. No chef, no driver, no Miller. You're going to see the world from the perspective of the people you step on. He looked at my sofa and its coffee-stained arm. You want me to live in this? In this, I confirmed. You sleep on that couch. You eat what I cook. If you survive a week without firing me, I'll consider being your woman of substance. Caspian looked out at his Maybach idling at the curb, then back at me. He owned houses on 3 continents, but I held the keys to the only thing he cared about, his power. Fine, he snapped, tossing his blazer over a kitchen chair. But Kestrel. Find some decent coffee. I'm not drinking instant swill. I smiled. For the first time in 5 years, it wasn't a professional mask. It was a warning. Welcome to the real world, Caspian. Rule number 1, the hardware doesn't take orders. He stood in my kitchen like an apex predator in a birdcage. He didn't just take up space, he dominated it. You're serious, he said, raking a gaze over my cluttered desk. It's called an apartment, Caspian. Most of the people who make your billions live in them. I felt a dizzying rush of power. I used to jump at his ringtone. Now, I watched him eye my sofa like a biohazard. I have a board meeting in 12 hours, he said in that low, dangerous register used for crushing competitors. Lucien is circulating a memo to gut the company. Then you'd better figure out the subway. Miller isn't coming. If you leave before the week is up, the deal is dead. Caspian's jaw worked, a vein throbbing in his temple. He reached for his phone, his scepter. Hand it over, I said. He froze. Excuse me. Rule number 2, no work, give me the phone. For a moment, I thought he might strike me, not with his hands, but with the calculated cruelty he used to dismiss the obsolete. But he realized I wasn't bluffing. He placed the device in my palm like a piece of his soul. If the company falls while I'm playing house, Kestrel, 10 million will be the least of your worries. I've spent 5 years worrying about your company, I said, tucking it into my robe. I think I can handle a week of you worrying about yourself. The first night was a disaster. Caspian paced the living room exactly 6.5 steps, like a caged tiger. He complained about the refrigerator's hum and the thinness of the walls. How do you sleep in this cacophony? He demanded. I don't. I usually stay awake answering your emails until 3 a.m. He turned. For the first time in half a decade, the irritation faded into a dark, unreadable curiosity. He looked at me without a task list in his hand. You never complained. Complaining to you is like shouting at a hurricane, a waste of breath. He opened his mouth to respond, but a frantic knocking cut him off. I checked the peephole and my stomach dropped. It's Miller. Caspian's head of security stumbled in tie-crooked. Sir, I tracked your watch. Caspian, King of Wall Street persona, snapped back instantly. What is it? Lucian's gone nuclear. He's leaking your private memos, the ones about downsizing domestic staff, and he's leaked Kestrel's resignation letter. I felt the blood drain from my face. Why? He's framing it as a whistleblower situation, Miller panted. He's blacklisting you, Kestrel. He told every firm in New York and Paris that if they hire you, Montreal Group pulls their contracts. You're radioactive. The book slipped from my fingers, hitting the floor with a dull thud. Lucian wasn't just taking the company, he was erasing me. I waited for the cold calculation, for Caspian to strategize how to use my radioactivity to his advantage. Instead, he stepped toward Miller, his voice a terrifying hiss. He touched her career. He burned it to the ground, sir, Miller confirmed. She's effectively barred. Caspian turned to me. His eyes weren't cold, they were turbulent, surging with a protective rage. He wants a war. He thinks he can isolate you to get to me. He succeeded, I whispered. I have nothing now, Paris is gone. No, the authority in his voice made the air vibrate. He made a mistake. He forgot that you aren't just an assistant. You're the person who knows how I think. He turned back to Miller. Tell the board I'll be at the meeting tomorrow, but I won't be alone. Sir, Miller asked. Caspian's smile was sharp, predatory. Lucian wants a whistleblower. Let's give the press something better. Miller, call the Times. Tell them Kestrel Vance didn't quit because of irregularities. Tell them she quit because we're engaged, and she refused to work for her future husband. Caspian, wait. He held up a hand and stepped closer, heat radiating off him. He tried to blacklist you from the world, Kestrel. I'm going to make you the center of it. Are you in, or are you going to let Lucian win? I looked at the man I had hated for 48 hours and saw the partner he could be. The hardware was being offered a seat at the table. I'm in, I said. But Caspian, we do this as a team, or I walk into that meeting and tell them everything. A team, Caspian repeated, the word sounding foreign but right. God help Lucian. The plan was a suicide mission, dressed in couture. By 7 a.m., my apartment was a command center. Miller had brought a garment bag that cost more than my tuition and a team of artists who treated my bathroom like a dungeon. You look pale, Caspian noted from the doorway. He was in midnight blue, drinking coffee from the chipped World's Best Boss mug I'd bought as a joke. He looked absurdly out of place, a wolf in a sheepfold. I'm about to tell a room of titans I'm in love with the man who left me for dead. I snapped as a stylist tugged at my hair. Pale is an understatement. Caspian set the mug down and dismissed the stylists with a nod. They scurried out. They don't think you're a saboteur, Kestrel, he said, his voice dropping to that low frequency that made my skin prickle. They think you're a threat. Lucian attacked you because you can verify his incompetence. This isn't a defense, it's a counterattack. He pulled a box from his pocket. No kneeling, no speech. He simply opened it to reveal a diamond the size of a postage stamp. Wear it, he commanded. And when we walk in, don't look at the cameras. Look at me. If they see you looking at me like I'm your world, they won't look at the stock price. I'm a good assistant, Caspian, I said, sliding the heavy ring onto my finger. It felt like a handcuff. But I'm not an actress. Then don't act, he whispered, leaning in until I could feel his breath. Just remember how much you hate Lucian. Use that. The entrance to Montreal Group was a gauntlet of flashing lights and shouting voices. As the Maybach pulled to the curb, a sea of reporters surged against the security line. Lucian had planned a public humiliation, expecting me to slink through the back or stay hidden. Instead, Caspian stepped out and reached back into the car, offering his hand. My fingers were ice, his were steady and possessive. The roar was deafening. Kestrel, is it a PR stunt? Did you quit because of the affair? We didn't answer. We walked through the lobby, our footfalls echoing on the same marble that had nearly been my grave. I kept my head high, hand tucked into Caspian's arm. Every camera click felt like a bullet. The double-thick oak doors of the boardroom swung open. The air inside was frigid. Lucian sat in Caspian's chair, smirk personified, surrounded by 12 board members who looked carved from granite. Caspian, Lucian said, his voice dripping with faux concern. We didn't expect you to bring the help. Caspian didn't slow down. He pulled out a chair for me, not in the corner, but at the table. You're right about one thing, Lucian, Caspian's voice echoed with terrifying clarity. This is about integrity, which is why my fiancé is here to clarify the irregularities you've been leaking. The word fiancé hit the room like an oxygen tank in a fire. Silas Montreal, 80 years old with eyes like flint, slammed his cane against the floor. Engagement? You expect us to believe this after that audio leak? The audio was a diversion, Caspian lied with chilling perfection. Kestrel resigned because I couldn't have my future wife managing my payroll, a conflict of interest Lucian chose to weaponize. Lucian's laugh was brittle. She's a disgruntled employee caught in a lie. Tell them, Kestrel. Or should I play the recording of you wanting to burn the building down? I didn't look at Caspian. I looked at Silas. I didn't quit because of irregularities, I said, my voice cold enough to rival Caspian. I quit because I realized if I was marrying into this family, I wouldn't do it as an employee. I would do it as an equal. I slid a tablet across the table to Silas. Those aren't irregularities, Silas. Those are receipts of Lucian's personal expenses billed to the Tokyo merger. He didn't leak my letter to protect the firm. He leaked it because I have the encryption keys to the audit he's been hiding. Absolute silence. Lucian's face turned a sickly gray. He reached for the tablet, but Silas slammed his cane down, pinning Lucian's hand to the table. Caspian, Silas said, eyes fixed on Lucian. Is this true? Kestrel handles the audits. Caspian leaned back, crossing his arms. There was a searing respect in his eyes. I trust her word more than my own blood. You bitch, Lucian hissed, reaching to grab my arm. Caspian was a blur. He didn't hit him. He simply crushed Lucian's wrist in a grip that made the man gasp. Don't, Caspian whispered. You touched her career. If you touch her again, I won't just fire you, I'll erase you. He let go, and Lucian slumped back, defeated. Silas looked at me, then at the ring on my finger. 90 days, the old man grumbled. The wedding had better be the event of the decade. If this is a ruse, I'll disinherit both of you. As we walked out, the adrenaline faded into a crushing reality. We had won the battle, but we had just signed a death warrant for our freedom. The elevator doors slid shut, cutting off the noise of the world. I slumped against the wall. I'm going to throw up, I whispered. Caspian stood in the center of the small space, eyes fixed on the doors. You were brilliant. I was a liar, and now I'm trapped in a 90-day countdown. It's real enough for the stock market. He turned, his thumb brushing the sapphire on my hand. And Kestrel, rule number 3, no one speaks to you like that again. The plush leather and the scent of Caspian's cologne, once symbols of my servitude, now felt like a gilded cage. Inside the Maybach, Caspian was already on his 3rd phone call, barking orders. I don't care about the optics, he snapped. Deactivate his keycard, mirror his files, and remove his name from the lobby by sunrise. If a word of that audit reaches the press before I've spun it, I'll have heads. He ended the call and looked at me. I was staring at the Manhattan lights, twisting the heavy diamond. You did well today, Kestrel. I did what I've always done, Caspian, I replied, not looking at him. I fixed your mess, but I'm a lead character in your fiction now. It's strategy, not fiction. Silas isn't a fool, I said, turning to face him. He'll have us watched. That means dinners, appearances, and an altar. We need a real contract. Caspian leaned back. Miller has the base terms. 10 million at the end of 90 days, an additional 5 if the stock holds, and the endowment for your firm. And the dignity clause. He stiffened. The what? You nearly killed me with a schedule. From now on, you don't dictate my time. We're partners, which means you finish your human being training. 1 week in my world. No Miller, no chef, no driver. He looked like he wanted to argue, but the ghost of the boardroom remained. Without me, he'd have lost. Fine, 1 week. Walking up 3 flights of stairs, because the elevator was under maintenance, again, was a jarring return to reality. Caspian carried his own garment bag, a sight I wished I'd recorded, and followed me inside. He eyed the couch with the dread of a man looking at a bed of nails. Sit, I commanded, pointing to the kitchen chair. I sat across from him, under the harsh, yellow light of the kitchen. Term 1, I said, pen hovering over a legal pad. We do not touch. Unless it's for cameras, there is a 6-foot buffer zone. Caspian nodded. Agreed. Term 2, you are responsible for yourself. You will use the washing machine. You will cook. You will do dishes. He looked at the hands that signed billion-dollar deals. I am capable of operating machinery, Kestrel. Term 3, I looked him straight in the eyes. The truth, no strategic omissions. If Lucian moves or Silas calls, you tell me first. No more variables. Caspian was silent. For a fleeting second, the Ice King mask slipped. He looked tired, not just from the day, but from a lifetime of being a glacier. The truth is a dangerous thing to give away, he said softly. It's the only currency I'll accept. He took the pen and wrote 1 word in his elegant script. Done. He pushed the pad back. But I have a term of my own. What? Stop looking at me like the monster under your bed. If we're going to convince the world, you have to tolerate my presence without flinching. I flinch because you're unpredictable. I am the most predictable man you know, he countered. I am always looking for the win, and right now, the win is you. At 7 a.m., a muffled curse pulled me from sleep. I found Caspian staring at my 10-year-old coffee maker as if it were an alien artifact. In his dress pants and an undershirt, his hair disheveled, he looked human, and annoyingly attractive. It's leaking, he said, pointing to the pool on the counter. You didn't seat the carafe. I stepped past him to fix it. He stayed behind me, the 6-foot buffer down to 6 inches. My pulse skipped at the heat radiating off him. I toasted the bread, he said, pointing to 2 pieces of charred carbon. We'll work on it. The day passed in a surreal blur. I worked on my Paris portfolio at the table while Caspian sat on the floor with his laptop, managing an empire from a fraying rug. Every few hours, he'd break the silence. Kestrel, where is the detergent? Kestrel, why is the neighbor's cat staring at me? Kestrel, thank you for the audit files. By evening, the tension had shifted from acidic to heavy. I was at the stove when the news broke on the corner TV. Caspian Montreal has demanded a public show of affection at this weekend's charity gala to prove the validity of the union. I dropped the wooden spoon. A public show of affection. Caspian looked up, his expression darkening. Silas is testing us. He wants to see if you'll pull away. He stood and walked toward me, ignoring the 6-foot mark. He wants a show. We have 3 days to make sure you don't flinch when I touch you. Caspian. No, Miller, just us. He reached out, his fingers grazing the sensitive skin of my neck as he tucked a lock of hair behind my ear. I didn't flinch. I just forgot how to breathe. Over the next 3 days, the buffer zone vanished. He was everywhere. If I washed a dish, he was there to dry it, his hand brushing mine. If I read, he sat at the other end of the sofa until our legs crossed. He was desensitizing me, or colonizing me. You're doing it again, he murmured Friday evening. My hand was on his chest, his arm looped around my waist. Doing what? Holding your breath. Your heart is racing like a trapped bird. Every socialite with a grudge will know you're terrified. I'm not terrified, I lied. The heat of his palm through my silk blouse made it hard to think. I'm just not used to the Ice King being so flammable. His grip tightened. The ice only exists to protect what's underneath, Kestrel. Before I could answer, my phone vibrated. An anonymous message. A single image. My stomach dropped. It was a photo of us through the window from 10 minutes ago, intimate, blurred, and unmistakable. The caption, $10 million buys a lot of love, doesn't it, Kestrel? See you at the gala. L. Lucian, I whispered, handing him the phone. Caspian's face transformed. The man coaching me to be a wife vanished. The predator returned. He's desperate. He's realized Silas won't take him back unless he proves we're a fraud. He's going to move tonight. Tonight, the gala is the big stage. Lucian doesn't wait for the stage. He burns the theater down while people are in their seats. Caspian scanned the dark street below. He knows our contract exists. He just hasn't found the hard copy. I looked at the kitchen table. The legal pad with Caspian's signature was a smoking gun. We have to go. I reached for the pad. No, Caspian stopped my hand. He wants a panicked handoff, Miller. No answer. The silence was heavy, ominous. Caspian grabbed his phone, but the screen was a flicker of static. Signal jammer, he's nearby. The lights flickered and died. Total darkness. Outside, a heavy fog rolled off the East River, swallowing the streetlights. Caspian was at my side in an instant, his hand firm on my waist. Stay behind me. Caspian, I know where the candles. Listen to me, he whispered, breath hot against my ear. Lucian isn't just looking for a contract. He's looking for leverage. If he can't prove the marriage is fake, he'll make sure it never happens. A heavy thud echoed from the fire escape, shattering glass. Caspian grabbed my hand, his grip crushing. Service stairs, now. We burst into the hallway, the air smelling of damp concrete. We took the stairs 2 at a time, boots echoing from the floor above. My lungs burned, but I didn't stop. We reached the ground floor and ducked into the alley. The fog was a wall of gray, but I heard the roar of a high-performance engine. Is that Miller? No, Caspian pulled me behind a stack of crates. That's a Jaguar, Lucian's signature. A figure stepped out of the fog, his tablet glowing like a malevolent eye. I have to hand it to you, Caspian. Lucian's voice was a jagged slide. Living in a tenement, dedicated. But did you think I wouldn't find the paper trail? Go home, Lucian. The board already signed. Based on a lie, Lucian stepped closer, eyes wild. I have the digital trail for the $10 million transfer to Kestrel's name. What will Silas do when he realizes his woman of substance was bought? The blood drained from my face. He had the bank records. Caspian didn't flinch. He stepped out, keeping me tucked against his side. It's a prenuptial settlement, Lucian, standard. If that's all you have, you've wasted your time. Is it? Lucian sneered, holding up a yellow legal pad. I found your dignity clause. Term 1, we do not touch. Doesn't sound like a blushing bride. My heart stopped. Someone had slipped into the apartment while we ran. Give it to me. Caspian's voice dropped to a level that made the hair on my arms stand up. Or what? I'm going to the press. By the gala tomorrow, you'll be the laughingstock of the world. Lucian turned for the car. Caspian didn't chase him. Instead, he framed my face with his hands. In the damp, foggy light, his gaze was a physical weight. Kestrel, he whispered, trust me. Before I could breathe, he pulled me in. This wasn't a rehearsal. His mouth crashed against mine with a raw, unscripted hunger. It was a collision, the Ice King melting in real time. My knees buckled as the world disappeared. There was only the taste of him and the terrifying realization that I wasn't acting anymore. Flash. A blinding light erupted. Not the tablet. A camera. Miller stepped out of the shadows with a DSLR. Got it, sir. Caspian broke the kiss but kept his arm hooked around my neck, his thumb stroking my jaw. He looked at Lucien, whose face had gone a ghostly shade of white. You wanted the press, Lucien? Caspian's voice was a low, triumphant hum. Go ahead, but before you upload that contract, Miller will leak footage of you stalking us into an alley. The headline, The Disgruntled Cousin Who Can't Stop Watching. Lucien looked at the camera, then at us, intertwined and breathless. The yellow legal pad in his hand looked like a pathetic scrap of paper. You planned this, Lucien stammered. I didn't plan for you to be this stupid. Now, get in your car. If I see your face at the gala, the next thing Miller leaks is the CCTV of you breaking into Kestrel's apartment. Lucien scrambled into the Jaguar and sped into the fog. The alley went silent. Adrenaline receded, leaving me trembling. I pulled back, fingers brushing my lips. That was too much, I whispered. Caspian didn't look triumphant. He looked shaken. Was it? He didn't wait for an answer. Miller, get the car. We're moving to the penthouse. The week in the real world is over. We have a gala to win. The transition to the penthouse was like teleporting to another planet. Climate-controlled air and an expensive, thick silence. Floor-to-ceiling glass offered a jagged view of the city Caspian owned from the top down. Miller will stay in the guest wing, Caspian said, his back to me as he unbuttoned his damp shirt. You'll take the master suite. I'll use the study. Caspian, about the alley. We don't need to. It was a tactical necessity, Kestrel, nothing more. His professional tone was back, but his shoulders were corded with tension. Tactical, I repeated. Right. I turned to leave, but the city lights hit him at a sharp angle. Through his half-undone shirt, I saw it. A jagged, white line of scar tissue starting at his collarbone and disappearing toward his ribs. I stopped. I'd handled his insurance and his physicals for 5 years. I knew his blood type, but I'd never seen this. What is that? I reached out, pointing. Caspian flinched, a raw, physical recoil. He gripped the edges of his shirt. None of your business, go to bed. I know your social security number by heart, but I've never seen that. You've hidden it. He let out a jagged laugh. That's how empires are built. Not this one, I said, stepping closer. We're unmasking for the gala. If Silas sees you flinch when I touch you, he'll know. Tell me. Caspian looked at his reflection in the glass, ghostly and fragile. Slowly, he let his hands drop. He stopped hiding. A souvenir, he said quietly. From the night the Montreal legacy truly began, everyone knows the story. The perfect couple. The car accident on a rain-slicked road. He turned, and the look in his eyes was hollow. It wasn't an accident. My father found out my mother wanted to leave him. He told her if she left, she'd take nothing. Not even her life. Caspian. I was 10 in the backseat. I heard them screaming. I saw him take his hands off the wheel. He looked at her and said, if I can't have the perfect life, no one gets a life at all. He steered us off the bridge on purpose. He touched the scar through his shirt. A piece of the railing came through the windshield. It killed my mother instantly. My father died a hero in the press. My grandfather spent millions to ensure the perfect Montreal image stayed intact. The room felt ice cold. The machine I had served for 5 years was actually a boy who had survived a murder-suicide and been forced to guard the secret for the sake of the stock price. That's why you hate marriage, I whispered. That's why you call it a prison. Marriage isn't a partnership in my world, Kestrel. It's a branding exercise, a way to trap someone until they break or run. And when they run, the person with the most power wins. I swore I'd never be in that backseat again. I stepped into his space. My fingers trembled against the fabric over his scar. It felt hard and ridged beneath the silk. I'm not your mother, Caspian, I said, meeting his turbulent eyes. And I'm not your father. I'm the girl who fainted on your floor because she cared about a man who didn't know how. His heart hammered, not the steady, rhythmic beat of a CEO, but a frantic thrum. Why are you still here? He asked, his voice a broken rasp. You have the money, you could have let Lucien win. Because I realized the Ice King is a lie. You aren't cold, Caspian, you're frozen. And I've spent 5 years trying to thaw you out. The air changed. It wasn't tactical anymore. Caspian reached up, covering my hand and pressing it harder against his scar. He leaned down, his forehead resting against mine. If you stay, if we do this for real, I don't know how to be human. I only know how to be a Montreal. Then let me teach you, I whispered. He didn't kiss me. He just held me in the center of his glass empire, 2 broken variables trying to make the equation work. As his arms wrapped around me, I knew the gala wasn't our biggest challenge. The challenge would be surviving when the masks finally came off. The penthouse, usually a sterile gallery, felt like a shared bunker the next morning. We ate breakfast in a fragile silence. I watched him drink his coffee and saw only the 10-year-old boy in the backseat of a crashing car. We leave in 4 hours, Caspian said, setting his cup down. He was back in his armor, crisp white shirt, detached focus. Silas has invited the legacy board. They're coming to see if I've finally tamed my rebellion. I'm not a wild animal, Caspian. I know that. His gaze lingered a second too long. But the world needs to believe I've found something worth settling for. Give me tonight, Kestrel, and the 90 days won't matter. The board will be ours. I nodded, the ring heavy on my finger. I'll give you tonight. While Caspian went to the study, I prepared in the master suite. Out of habit, I checked the secure server logs for Lucian's fingerprints. Then I saw it. A hidden folder, 3 layers deep, in a partition only Caspian and I could access. Project Kest. I clicked. Inside wasn't a dossier on my design firm. It was a chronological history of my life. My mother's illness 3 years ago. The specialist who happened to have a cancellation and took the case for free was on the Montreal Group payroll. The landlord who dropped my eviction case and gave me a 5-year frozen lease. The holding company was a Montreal subsidiary. Even the Paris Fellowship. An email from Caspian's private account read, "Ensure Kestrel Vance is accepted. Fund the grant anonymously. I want her to have a reason to stay until I am ready." The world tilted. The vulnerability in the alley, the confession last night, it was a masterclass in manipulation. He hadn't saved me from the floor. He had engineered my reality so he was the only person I could rely on. Kestrel. I didn't turn. His footsteps were steady, confident, the sound of a man who owned the floor beneath him. "The car is downstairs," Caspian said, stopping behind me. "You look." I turned the laptop screen toward him. The silence was a vacuum. Caspian's face didn't crumble. He didn't even look surprised. He just stared at the screen, then at me, his eyes returning to that flat, terrifying gray. "You've been in my files," he said quietly. "Project Kest," I whispered. "You bought my mother's doctor, you bought my apartment, you even bought my dream. Was any of my life actually mine, or was I just an investment you were grooming?" "It wasn't like that." He took a step forward. "Then what was it?" I shouted. "You let me think I was struggling just so you could swoop in and save me. You didn't want a wife, you wanted a pet." "I wanted you to stay," he roared, the Ice King cracking with a violence that made me flinch. "I knew the moment you realized your own worth you'd leave, so yes, I cleared the path. I ensured your mother was cared for. I ensured you had a home. I ensured you had a future. You took my choice, you took my dignity." "I gave you security," he countered, chest heaving. "In my world, that's better than love. Love is what my father did. Security is what I do." "Security is for assets," I said, stepping back. The ring felt like a hot coal. "You don't love me. You're just terrified of losing the only person who knows how to fix you." The internal lobby chime rang. The gala was starting. Caspian's mask snapped back on, tighter than ever. "We have to go. The board is waiting. You can hate me tomorrow, Kestrel, but tonight you will put on that dress and play your part." "And if I don't?" "Then Lucian wins. Your mother's medical bills go unpaid. And the Paris firm, I'll liquidate it before your flight touches down." I looked at the man who had traded his scars for my trust, then used that trust as a leash. "You really are your father's son," I whispered. He didn't flinch, but agony flickered in his eyes before he turned away. "Don't be late." The charity gala was a hall of mirrors. To the guests, we were a power couple reborn. To me, his hand on my back felt like a brand. Every smile at a board member felt like a phantom weight at my throat. I was nauseous, not from a baby, but from the acidic stress of standing next to my museum curator. I passed every champagne glass to Caspian or a passing tray. "You're not drinking, Kestrel?" one board member's wife asked, her eyes darting to my midsection. "And you have such a luminous glow, wouldn't you say, Caspian?" Caspian saw the opening. He didn't confirm, he didn't deny. He simply pulled me closer, his hand resting possessively over my stomach. "She's had a long week," he said smoothly. "I'm making sure she rests." By dessert, the whisper had mutated. The scent of seared lamb sent me fleeing to the restroom. When I emerged, 2 women from Lucian's circle were whispering at the sinks. "She's definitely pregnant. Why else would he marry her? It's a shotgun wedding to save the CEO seat." I washed my hands, fingers trembling. In this world, a correction was a confession. I returned to the hall to find the atmosphere frenzied. Lucian stood at the edge of the room, a dark smirk on his face. He didn't need proof, he just needed a narrative. Within 20 minutes, phones began to chime across the room. A blind item had been posted. "Which billionaire Ice King is fast-tracking a wedding to hide a bump? Seems the variable has become a permanent addition to the Montreal Group assets." Caspian pulled me behind a velvet curtain. "Lucian is pushing a pregnancy narrative," he whispered. "I know, I heard them." My voice was ice. "Is this the security you provide? A global pregnancy watch while I'm trying to leave you?" "We can't deny it yet," he said, ignoring the jab. Silas will demand a medical report. He's already calling. Then tell him the truth. We haven't even shared a bed. I can't. If he thinks there's an heir, he'll fast-track the chairmanship to protect the legacy. It's the leverage we need to end Lucien. You want me to fake a pregnancy? Horror dawned on me. What happens in 4 months when there's no baby? We'll lose it. A tragic miscarriage. It will humanize us. I slapped him. The sound was sharp. My hand stung, but the shock on his face was worth it. You! Use a tragedy like that as a PR move. Everything is a move on a board to you. My life, my dreams, a phantom child. I'm trying to win, he hissed, grabbing my wrists. You've already lost. I tore my hands away. You lost the moment you thought you could buy me. The curtain swept aside. Silas Montreal stood there, cane planted. Behind him, Lucien grinned, phone out. A child, Silas barked. Is it true, Kestrel? Is there an heir? The room went deathly silent. Hundreds of eyes turned to us. Caspian looked at me with a desperate, silent plea. For the first time, he wasn't the king. No, I said, my voice ringing out. I'm not pregnant. Lucien's grin widened. Caspian went white. But, I stepped toward Silas. I am the woman who holds every encryption key to this firm's servers. And if we're talking about legacies, let's discuss why Lucien is so eager to talk about my medical history, while his own offshore accounts are being flagged for an IRS audit. Lucien's grin vanished. I'm not a bump in the road, Silas. I run this firm. If Caspian wants to marry me, it's not because of a baby. It's because he knows that without me, this building is a house of cards. I walked past them, straight for the exit. I didn't wait for Caspian. I was the one holding the cards now. The walk to the curb was a frozen wasteland. Cameras flashed in a stuttering nightmare. Was the audit a threat? Is the engagement over? I didn't stop until I reached the black sedan. Miller opened the door. I slid into the leather interior, but the seat was empty. He stayed behind, Miller said as he pulled away. He's facing Silas and the board. You threw a grenade and walked out. He threw the first one 3 years ago, I said, looking at the sapphire ring. It looked like a bruised eye in the dark. He's been playing God with my life. Did you help him buy my mother's doctor? Miller's grip on the wheel tightened. I do what I'm told, but I've never seen him spend this much effort on an asset. He was obsessed with the details. He wanted you safe. He wanted me to be his, I corrected. There's a difference. An hour later, I was back in the penthouse, still in my midnight blue gown. I sat on the edge of the master bed and waited for the storm. It arrived at midnight. The elevator hissed open. Caspian's footsteps echoed through the marble hallway, heavy and deliberate. He didn't go to the study. He walked straight into the bedroom. His tie was gone, his hair a mess, and his eyes bloodshot. He looked like a man who had survived a shipwreck. You told them, he said, his voice a low vibration. I told them the truth. I refused to let you use a fake pregnancy to buy another quarter of power. I won't be the mother of a ghost just so you can feel secure. Silas has called for a vote of no confidence. Caspian stepped toward me, the air around him charged. He thinks you've compromised me. Lucien is calling it a domestic coup. Then let him have it. If you can only lead by manipulating the people who care about you, you don't deserve the chair. I did it for us, he roared, slamming his hand against the bedpost. The wood crackled. I built a world where you would never worry about a medical bill again. I gave you everything. You gave me a cage, I screamed, tears finally breaking. You didn't trust me enough to let me love you for who you are. You thought you had to bribe the universe to keep me. Every good thing in my life was just a billionaire pulling a string. Caspian froze. The rage drained away, replaced by a hollow stillness. He looked at me, and I saw the truth. He didn't believe he was worth staying for unless he owned the person. I don't know how to do it any other way, he whispered. Then you shouldn't be with anyone. I reached for the sapphire ring. It was stuck, my finger swollen from stress. I tugged, skin turning red, breath hitching. Kestrel, stop. He moved toward me. No, I want everything Montreal off me. I pulled until the metal cut my skin. With a sharp sob, it slid off. I didn't hand it to him. I let it hit the floor. The diamond rolled under the vanity. Go save your empire, Caspian. I'm finding a life you didn't pay for. The blacklist is still active, he said, though the bite was gone. I'm the only one who can lift it. Let it stay. I'd rather be unemployed and free than your well-funded puppet. I began to pack. I expected a contract, a bribe, or a threat. Instead, I heard the dull clink of him picking up the ring. The vote is at 8 a.m., he said, his back to me. Silas said if I want the company, I have to issue a statement calling you emotionally unstable. I have to discredit you to save myself. I stopped packing. And are you going too? Caspian stood in the doorway, his shadow stretching long across the room. He looked at the sapphire in his palm. I've spent my life trying not to be the boy in the backseat, he said softly. But I realized tonight, the backseat isn't what kills you. It's being the one driving everyone you love off the bridge. He looked at me with a terrifying finality. Go to Paris, Kestrel. Miller will take you to the airport. The blacklist is gone. I took the blame for everything. Caspian. I'm going to the meeting, he said. But not to save the company. I'm going to finish what you started. He turned and walked away. The elevator hissed. The penthouse went silent. I stood among my half-packed clothes, realizing the Gala of Thorns wasn't over. The final sacrifice was yet to come. The 8 a.m. sun reflected off Montreal Tower like 1,000 sharpened blades. I sat in a taxi, suitcase beside me, staring at the building I'd called home for 5 years. I should have been at JFK. Miller had offered the private jet, but I wanted nothing more from Caspian. No more favors, no more gilded gifts. The driver asked for the third time where we were going. I couldn't say the airport. Wait here, I whispered, handing him $100 bill. Inside, the boardroom smelled of old paper and impending execution. Silas sat at the head of the table, his cane resting like a scepter. The 12 board members were grim, ready to cut away a limb to save the body. Lucian sat to the right, a look of predatory triumph on his face. He already had the press release drafted. Caspian Montreal steps down. Lucian Montreal assumes chairmanship. The doors opened. Caspian walked in. No tie, no cufflinks, just a black suit and a face carved from granite. He didn't sit. He stood at the foot of the table and looked at his grandfather. The statement is ready, Caspian. Silas's voice was gravel. Sign it. Denounce the girl. Tell them she manipulated the logs. Do that and the company stays yours. Lucian leaned forward. Save your empire. What's one girl's reputation compared to a $40 billion legacy? Caspian looked at the document, a masterpiece of character assassination. It would protect the Montreal name and bury mine forever. He picked up the pen. For 10 years I lived for this firm, Caspian addressed the board. I sacrificed sleep, health, and humanity. I lied for you. I buried scandals. I was the monster you needed. He looked at Silas. But last night I realized a legacy isn't just a pile of money. It's supposed to be something you're proud to leave behind. Caspian took the document and tore it in half. Then again. White scraps fell onto the mahogany like snow. I will not discredit Kestrel Vance. Every word she said was the truth. Lucian is a thief. The audit is real. And the only lapse in judgment I've had in 5 years was thinking I was worthy of a woman like her. You're throwing it all away, Silas roared, slamming his cane. For a girl who's already left you. I'm not throwing it away, Silas, Caspian said, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. I'm resigning, effective immediately. The room erupted. Lucian's victory laugh cut short as Caspian continued. But I'm not leaving you with Lucian. As of midnight, I exercised my majority right to appoint an independent auditor. I've handed the evidence of Lucian's fraud to the SEC. If you vote him in today, the feds will shut this building down by noon. Lucian's face went a mottled purple. You destroy the stock price. I don't care about the stock price. Caspian turned to the board. Miller will oversee the transition to a professional management firm. No more Montreals, no more secrets. He walked toward the door. You'll have nothing, Silas screamed after him. I'll strip your name, the penthouse, the accounts, everything. Caspian didn't look back. Keep them, grandfather. They were always too cold anyway. I was standing on the sidewalk when he walked out. He didn't have a driver. He didn't have security. He was just a man in a black suit, standing in a crowd of people who had no idea his world had just ended. He saw me and stopped. We stood across the sea of rushing New Yorkers, the roar of the city fading into the background. You stayed, he said, his voice barely audible. I had to see if you do it, I said, my heart pounding. Did you sign? Caspian walked toward me. He looked lighter. The brittle, icy edge was gone. I tore it up. I'm unemployed, Kestrel. My reputation is in tatters and I have a car I don't own. He stopped inches away. I'm a variable with no value. Value is relative, Caspian. I took his hand, warm and steady. And for the record, I've always been good at building from scratch. Paris, but no anonymous grants. We do it for real. I don't know how to be real, he whispered, eyes filled with a raw vulnerability. I know, but you have a great assistant. She'll show you the way. As we turned from the Montreal Tower, he held my hand tighter. For the first time in 5 years, the equation was balanced. Paris in the autumn had soft edges and the smell of roasted chestnuts. Our studio in the Marais was a third-floor walk-up with creaky floors and a tiny balcony. It was mine, signed with my own money. Kestrel, the coffee press is defying me again. Caspian's voice drifted from the kitchen. I smiled, sketching a sleeve detail. Don't dominate it, Caspian, just press the plunger, gently. He emerged in a gray sweater and jeans, looking younger and softened. He set a cup before me and kissed the top of my head. I've spent 3 hours on the atelier logistics, he said, pulling up a stool. The supplier from Lyon is trying to overcharge. I've drafted a counter-proposal he'll regret. You're Kestrel Vance's business consultant now, remember. A title I take very seriously, he murmured, his thumb tracing my jaw. But that evening, as we walked along the Seine, the past caught up. I saw him first, a man in a sharp suit standing by the Pont Neuf. Miller. Caspian stiffened, stepping in front of me. Miller, I told you I didn't want to be found. I know, sir, Miller said, looking tired. But Silas is dying, a stroke 2 days ago. Caspian didn't flinch, but I felt the tremor in his hand. And Lucien has burned the reserves. He's liquidating heritage assets to cover short-squeeze losses. The board is in a panic. Miller looked Caspian in the eye. They want you back. Total autonomy. No grandfather, no oversight, just you. The air went cold. This was the crown Caspian had sacrificed everything for, offered on a silver platter. He looked at Miller, then at me. I held my breath. If he went back, I couldn't follow. I loved the man who made my coffee. I wouldn't let the king of Wall Street bury me again. The company is hemorrhaging, Miller pressed. If you don't return, Lucien will liquidate everything. Your mother's legacy will be gone by Christmas. Caspian looked at the river, the city lights dancing on the water. I saw the struggle in his jaw, the Ice King, fighting the man who had slept on my short sofa. Go to him, I whispered. If you need to save it, Caspian, I won't stop you. Caspian looked at me, a slow, heartbreaking smile touching his lips. You really think I'm that predictable? He turned back to Miller. Tell the board I decline. If the Montreal legacy is built on the backs of people like Lucien and Silas, let it burn. It's time for something new to grow. Miller looked stunned. Sir, the money. I have a job. I'm a consultant for a rising star in the fashion world. Caspian pulled me closer. The salary is modest, but the benefits are extraordinary. But Lucien. Tell Lucien that if he wants to sell the assets, I'll buy the foundations. Caspian's voice regained its terrifying, sharp edge. I'll preserve what my mother loved. The rest, he can have it. I'm done with cages, Miller. The stoic head of security smiled, a first in 5 years. He pulled a velvet box from his pocket. In that case, your grandfather told me to give you this if you said no. He said it was the only thing in the vault not for sale. Inside was a delicate gold locket. Caspian opened it to find a faded photo of a woman with his eyes. He knew, Caspian whispered. The old man knew I wouldn't come back. Miller nodded once and disappeared into the Parisian fog. Caspian held the locket, then tucked it away. The past had reached out, and for the first time, it couldn't pull him under. You're sure? I asked. You're okay letting it all go? Caspian pulled me into his arms. Kestrel, I didn't let it go. I just realized the only thing worth owning is my own heart, and I've already given that to the person who knows how to keep it. He kissed me on the Pont Neuf, a taste of freedom. The Montreal Empire was falling, but Caspian Montreal was finally rich. 1 year later, the lights of the Grand Palais were blinding, but they didn't feel like interrogators. Exactly 1 year since I had walked out of the Montreal Tower with a suitcase. Tonight, the banners bore a soft, intertwined KV, Vance Ateliers. The room was packed with the elite of Paris and New York, but the energy was different. This was a celebration of art, not a cold transaction. I stood behind the velvet curtain, adjusting the lace on the final gown. My hands shook. The sapphire was gone, replaced by a thin gold band from a jeweler in the Marais. It felt like air. 5 minutes, Mademoiselle Vance, a stagehand whispered. I took a shaky breath. For years, I had been the ghost in the machine, ensuring someone else's world didn't collapse. Now, the world was waiting for me. Warm hands settled on my shoulders. I didn't flinch. I leaned back into his heat and closed my eyes. You're doing it again, Caspian murmured. The sharp edge of the boardroom was gone, replaced by a grounded warmth. Doing what? Holding your breath. Your heart is racing, Kestrel, but not because you're trapped. It's because you're about to fly. I turned. Caspian looked incredible in forest green velvet, a suit I had designed. He looked relaxed, happy. What if they hate it? I whispered. What if I'm still the variable who got lucky? Caspian traced my jaw, his touch making my knees weak. Look at me. You aren't a variable, Kes. You're the sun. I'm just the planet that finally figured out how to stay in your orbit. He kissed me, a slow, deep kiss with no contracts and no strategies. Now go. He gave me a gentle nudge toward the curtain. I'll be in the front row, and Kestrel, I'm holding your coat tonight. I've never been prouder of a job. The show was a blur of music, light, and fabric. As the models walked the runway in my designs, ethereal and unapologetically bold, I watched the faces. I saw critics nodding and icons leaning in. But mostly I saw Caspian. He didn't look at the dresses. He looked at me in the wings, his eyes bright with a quiet, fierce pride. When I stepped out for the final bow, the roar was genuine acclaim, nothing like the polite clapping of a boardroom. For the first time, I didn't look for a pillar to hide behind. I looked straight at the man in the front row. Later, we sat on the steps of the Palais, the city draped in pre-dawn blue. Miller called, Caspian said, leaning his head against the stone. I tensed. Lucien. Lucien is gone. The SEC caught him at the airport. He's looking at 10 to 15 years for fraud. I let out the breath I'd held for a year. And Sila's. He passed away yesterday. Caspian looked at the stars. He left me the estate in Scotland. Not the company, just the house where my mother grew up. What will you do with it? Caspian interlaced our fingers. Turn it into a retreat for artists. A place for people to find their voice without someone trying to own it. He pulled me closer. The Montreal Empire was a fortress built to keep secrets in. What you've built, it's a bridge. We built it, Caspian. No, he kissed my temple. You built it, I just learned how to cross it. The sun peeked over the horizon, painting the Eiffel Tower in gold and rose. I leaned my head on his shoulder, the clockwork girl and the ice king finally still. The equation was solved. I love you, Caspian, I whispered. A playful, familiar smirk tugged at his lips. I know, it was in the briefing notes. I laughed, the sound echoing across the quiet river. We stood, hand in hand, and walked into our second year of freedom.